It's June 21st, 2019, and you are watching Battleground. Well, welcome to Battleground, ladies and gentlemen. It is me, David Menzies, and my good friend in Alberta, Sheila Gunn Reid, filling in for Ezra Levant. Ezra Levant is on assignment. That's what we say in the business when somebody's taking a vacation. But actually, I think he really is on assignment, or at the very least, it's a working vacation. I still get emails from the boss, so he's not just sunning himself on the beach. So good afternoon to you, Sheila. Of course, it's morning where you are still, but nevertheless, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, David. This is going to be fun. I always look forward to a chance to chit-chat with you in front of thousands of our friends for an hour. I think we're going to have a good time, and we're going to cover a lot of issues today.
Oh, and what a busy, busy week. And I don't think there was anyone busier than our roving reporter, Cian Bexty. He was just doing some amazing work, especially on Parliament Hill, trying to catch Liberals running off to their limo rides to get out of Dodge. But, you know, the fact is you're on public property. It's we still, believe it or not, have freedom of speech and freedom of the press and freedom of expression, although expect that to be curtailed if this regime gets in with another majority mandate. And I think instead of me droning on about Cian's work, we're going to show Cian confronting Selena Caesar Chavannes. Hopefully I pronounced that her name properly. And wow, what an exchange. Check it out.
You're going to come talk to me?
Why not? I'm happy to speak with you. I mean, the report said that there was genocide happening. Should we prosecute world leaders who oversee genocide?
I'm gonna leave you and the rebel to come up with your own dissertation about what.
Well, we'd love to hear a comment from you.
I'm sure you'll take it and you'll twist it in any way possible.
I'll publish the whole thing. You have my word.
Truth.
Whatever you say,
but that's okay.
I'll publish the whole thing.
I'm sure you will.
Should we prosecute world leaders if they oversee a genocide?
I think you should be looking in your own house before looking in other houses. How about that?
I'm not committing genocide. Do you think I'm committing genocide?
A lot of other stuff of perpetrating lies, doing whatever you want, inciting hate, inciting misinformation. I don't think that helps at all either. So.
How did Justin Trudeau bring you back on board after he yelled at you?
What do you mean he brought me back on board?
Well, you seem quite happy with him. Are you expecting some sort of an appointment?
Nobody brought me back on board.
You just speak with a prime minister and let him touch you after he verbally assaults you.
I decide what I do when I decide to do it.
And right? Do you forgive Justin Trudeau for yelling at you?
I decide what I decide to do when I decide to do it.
And do you forgive him?
I decide what I decide to do and when I decide to do it.
Why can't you tell me if you...
We could do this all day. Sure. But
until you get to your office.
No, you could keep going. You could keep going.
So do you forgive him?
I really have nothing good to say to the rebel. So I'm not sure why you're entertaining this line of questioning, but you can go ahead.
Just wondering if you forgive someone who verbally assaulted you. Anyways, have a good night. Thanks for chatting with me.
Are you done? Oh, the big guy's here and you're done.
I can keep coming. Did you just call me a pussy?
Darn right I did.
That's not very parliamentary language of you. Do you forgive Justin Trudeau?
And so what?
Do you forgive him?
Do you use parliamentary language in your bullshit that you put out on?
I'm a man of God.
Oh, good grief. Well, hopefully the same God that you serve is the one that I serve as well.
And is that Justin Trudeau, or do you forgive him?
No.
You don't forgive him? All right, I got more people to go interview, so I'll let you go.
You know, Sheila, I've seen that exchange about 5 times. Every time my jaw is on the linoleum. I just can't. I mean, there's so much to analyze there, but let's start with the ending. And it's so perversely ironic when somebody, I assume her bodyguard maybe, that big guy shows up, she refers to Cian as a pussy, which of course is a slur. And then she starts using profanity, shut the F up. Basically, what she's saying to Kian is, suddenly you are a coward walking away when a big guy shows up. But no, actually, what the dynamic is, Sheila, the way I look at it, is suddenly the cesarean section, if you will, has suddenly become emboldened. Now she's actually using slurs. She's using profanity. And by the way, I just want to say this. It's not that, we're all adults in the room. It's not as though we haven't heard harsh language, but I think if you are a member of government, I think the bar should be higher. I think you shouldn't be calling somebody an a-hole, using the F word, and yet here we are from the loving, tolerant left seeing this kind of language. It is completely unacceptable for those in power to use this language, and she should be ashamed of herself and issue an apology.
Yeah, well, she won't. Let's flip the script here for a second. And I don't want to insult my friend Kian by comparing him to Rosie Barton, of all people. But let's flip the script. Let's just say that was Maxime Bernier who responded like that to Rosie Barton. He would be excoriated for using gendered insults, because let's be real here, she wasn't referring to the cat when she called him a pussy. He would be, accused of being a misogynist, a woman hater, accused of attacking the free press, if you can even call CBC that. That sounds so crazy when you say it out loud. But even after the video went live and everybody could see her for exactly what she is, she doubled down. I just pulled up her tweet on my phone. She responded to the video by saying, when alt-right, which is a strange description for a Zionist network, but anyways, when alt-right so-called news outlets use intimidation and bullying tactics like following women and backing them into a corner to get a story, I call them what they are. And then she says she's #unintimidated, #unapologetic. There was no corner there. No. She wasn't bullied. Kian is such a happy warrior. I mean, what a BS artist this woman is. She doesn't want us to believe our own eyes. And I would go one step further. What she did there was no act of feminism against, Kian Bexte representing the pesky patriarchy. She actually revealed herself for the weak person that she is. And to go one step further, I think she sort of solidified some female stereotypes that, she, uses her gender as sort of a shield against answering perfectly reasonable, well-asked, non-confrontational questions. Kian wasn't even confrontational. He was taking the abuse there.
No, 100%, Sheila. And, anyone, if you've ever met Kian Bexte, my goodness, he's a gentleman.
Love him.
He's about, he's about as threatening as a teddy bear. Let's be honest. Mm-hmm. The idea that she was cowering in fear, that in broad daylight outside of Parliament Hill, where there's video surveillance everywhere and all manner of police and security guards, it's preposterous. But a couple of other things, there's two groups of people, Sheila, that have mastered the art of speaking without saying anything, and those are professional athletes and politicians. They all seem to be media trained to just basically say talking points without answering your question. And that's what I saw in that exchange where she kept saying, I decide what I want to do, just serving up nothing burgers to Kian's tangible questions. And the other thing, the one slip there was when she was referring to the rebel in terms of the genocide question as look at your own house. Well, what are we advocating genocide for anyone? Are we committing genocide? I haven't even brought the insecticide outside the deck yet, Sheila, for the bugs. They're not that bad yet. So what in blue hell is she talking about? I really don't know.
That woman is completely insane. You and I were talking off camera. I maybe, she's so unlikable that I maybe feel a little bit sorry for Justin Trudeau for having to deal with her.
Yeah, you know what?
She said Justin Trudeau screamed at her. I feel like screaming at her a little bit. I'm less of a happy warrior than Kian is. Kian handled that a lot better than I did. But yeah, maybe he did yell at her, and maybe I don't blame him.
And of course, you're alluding to when all the SNC-Lavalin file was in high gear, and you had Jane Philpott resigning and Jody Wilson-Raybould. Selena hopped on the heap by putting out that tweet, "Oh, what about that time you yelled at me?" Words to that effect. But has there been some kind of reconciliation? She was even evasive about that. So what's the deal there, Sheila?
Well, I don't know, but there were pictures out there that were published of her and Justin Trudeau, carefully staged pictures. It's not like someone happened across them sharing a good laugh in the park. But Justin Trudeau was doing that pickup artist, hands-on thing he does with women he wants to control. And he sort of had his hand on her shoulder, and they were sharing a good laugh. And it looks like the pickup artist moves worked, because she's seemingly back in the Liberal fold, although maybe not officially. But really, it doesn't matter in the end, because she's not running for re-election again, which looks like it's a blessing for the people of Whitby, Ontario. But we have a super chat, and thank you for the super chat, Justin at Proud Boys Calgary, because that prompted me to tell everybody exactly what we're doing here 10 minutes or 12 minutes into the show. We're a little late with that. If you would like David or I to answer a question or read one of your comments, you can do that in the form of a super chat. YouTube takes some of the money. We take some of the money. It's a great way to pay the bills around here and interact with you. And you get to interact with us, and we like to interact with you. So Justin, my friend Justin with Proud Boys Calgary, gives us $6.99, and he says, Canadian government then violated Kian's charter mobility rights when they refused him entry to the Canadian embassy in Washington, D.C. That's true. I don't know if the control room can bring that video up for us.
Mr. Producer has just informed me he has that clip for you, Sheila. So
dynamite.
Let's check it out.
I am beyond furious right now. I just left the White House, the briefing room, after I was treated very courteously by the Donald Trump administration. I came to the Canadian embassy, my own embassy, to cover my own prime minister, and the doors were closed on me. A prime minister's office staffer came out and told me that they decided with the Canadian press gallery that I was not allowed to cover the prime minister. They determined which media was and was not allowed in their own embassy. It's disgusting. I'm going to try not to use expletives right now because of how furious I am. It's true. There's two kinds of media in Canada right now. Media that's subsidized by Justin Trudeau and media that is banned by Justin Trudeau. It's despicable. The full video is going to come up as soon as I can send it to Toronto and get it put on YouTube. It's absolutely a disgrace. The Prime Minister's office is a disgrace. The press gallery is a disgrace. Frankly, they need to be scrapped. But so does this Prime Minister's office. I'll keep you guys posted. I imagine I'm not going to be able to ask Justin Trudeau if he lectured Donald Trump on social issues. I was really interested to hear if he brought that up again, because it's disgraceful how he's using Canadian international political capital for his own partisan gains in polls in Canada. God, I'm so frustrated. Check out the video. It'll be on rebelinvestigates.com.
Well, Sheila, when I see Kian, I'll just have to say, join the club. The exact same thing happened to me earlier this month in Ottawa by the Parliamentary Press Gallery. And talk about perverse irony. Efren, the cameraman, and I were there to cover the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights regarding the implementation of the pro-censorship, anti-free speech clause, Section 13, back into the Canadian Human Rights Act, something that the Harper Conservatives rightfully got rid of in 2013. And here we were, being told, even though we applied for the credentials to attend this standing committee at least 24 hours earlier, we were told 20 minutes before they opened the doors that they had been denied. And furthermore, when we asked for a reason, they deemed that Rebel Media, I'm paraphrasing here, but wasn't following the procedures and principles of journalists. So I would like some meat on those bones, Sheila. What does that mean exactly in tangible terms? Does that mean we conduct libel? Does that mean we're slanderous? Does that mean we're all about defamation? Well, the answers to all those three questions are no, no, no. And if you let the likes of the far left website rabble in with no problem, it's a disgrace. Once upon a time, you would have, if there was any media outlet, any journalist that was denied entry, and I know the same thing happened to you with the Alberta legislature, Sheila, you would have camaraderie in the press corps, whether they were left of center, right in the center. You would say there would be this feeling that we stand united for this freedom of speech. And now, because of the Justin Trudeau regime, where they are using what I call the carrot and the stick approach, the carrot being $1.5 billion to CBC, $600 million for the rest of you. If you play ball, no problem. Remember who your uncle in Ottawa is. And by the way, if you don't play ball, well, get ready to be perhaps deplatformed. Okay, so we can do it the easy way or the hard way. And these cowardly journalists in the mainstream media and the owners of these media outlets have bought into this hook, line, and stinker. And so you have a travesty of what Kean just experienced, where his own government has shut him out and not a peep from any of those lily-livered, cowardly journalists in the mainstream media going to bat for him. I understand fully Kean's anger that he displayed on camera.
Yeah, I mean, let's go back a step and explain exactly what the Parliamentary Press Gallery is. It's a cabal of mainstream media journalists, the failing mainstream media. Every week you hear about layoffs. Well, I wonder why that is. Yeah. And then they get together and they get to decide who gets access to our politicians in an official capacity. So when Justin Trudeau's holding official press conferences, they get to decide who gets accredited to go to these things. So they're doing a couple of different things. They're protecting their market share. Yeah. They're basically protecting their own monopoly on access to Canada's politicians, meaning that only one style of question ever gets asked of these politicians. And when the Conservatives are in power, it's hard, tough questions. And when Liberals are in power, it's friendly questions that act as basically a grant application for some of that $600 million in media bailout. It is absolutely disgusting that a group of competitors get to decide that we don't get access to our politicians to ask questions on behalf of the 1.2 million subscribers that want information from us and who rely on us to bring them the other side of the story. I think that's precisely the problem. They don't want us telling the other side of the story. They don't want Kean's inconvenient questions asked in front of international media, which was the case yesterday. But can we really expect anything different from a parliamentary press gallery that was headed by someone who just recently shoved Kean a little while ago? And these are all the same people. That man, I forget his name escapes me, but he shoved Kean at a Justin Trudeau event in Grassy Narrows. Was it Grassy Narrows?
I know.
No?
It was in Saskatchewan, I believe, right?
Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
I'm so worked up, everything's escaping me right now. But it was in northern Saskatchewan. Kean flew out there, then drove out there to cover a Justin Trudeau event. Again, one of the only unfriendly media in the audience. And so the man who heads up basically Justin Trudeau's media access entourage bit, he shoved Kean. He watched Kean, lined him up, and shoved him. And he used to be the head of the Parliamentary Press Gallery, Terry Gillion. That's his name.
Yes.
he used to head up the Parliamentary Press Gallery, and you see all these mainstream media journalists lamenting his retiring from the Parliamentary Press Gallery. So it is an incestuous little relationship that is going to continue to deny the rebel access to our politicians. But as Cian demonstrates every single day, that's not going to stop us. We'll get to these politicians whether they want us to or not.
Oh, 100%, Sheila. And by the way, I've just been informed by Mr. Producer that he has that clip. And while we're watching it, maybe Mr. Producer can dig up another perversely ironic clip, and that was Maria Monsef's treatment of us covering, if you can imagine it, World Press Freedom Day, which turned out to be the precise opposite. But first, that clip from Saskatchewan with Cian.
When I showed up at the media desk, but once I showed him this mic flash and this lanyard, his tone changed. He started following me around the arena, very intimidating like. Obviously, I wasn't too scared of this old man, but it all came to a head when he shoved me. He knew exactly where I was standing, and he didn't like it because I was standing in an area where I could ask the Prime Minister a question. Here's him shoving me. Look at this. It's despicable, this conduct. If this guy thinks that this kind of intimidation and bullying is going to stop me from following the Prime Minister all across Canada throughout the federal election, he's got something else coming. He just bought Prime Minister Justin Trudeau 100 more visits from Cian Bexte and the rest of the Rebel team. It's disgusting.
Wow. You know, just, and again, to your point earlier, Sheila, if that had happened to anyone with a CBC mic flash, I think we might see a royal commission struck to get to the bottom of this. That is despicable. And again, the silence is deafening, as they say. And by the way, also what Cian just said at the end there, you know, to quote Bachman Turner Overdrive, you ain't seen nothing yet, because was that, by the way, that was Bachman Turner Overdrive, wasn't it? That line, I think it was, because all summer long, whenever we're in the neighborhood of some liberal doing one of their community barbecues and glad handing and canvassing, we'll be there to ask the tough questions. I, by chance, last Saturday, Sheila, bumped into Masjid Jawari, who has this uncanny love affair with the Iranian regime in Tehran. He's tweeted their support, and if we can find that clip, we can play that a little later on. Again, this is something that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that when you put them on the carpet to answer questions, why did you do this? You just see either denial, even though the tweets are screen captured, or a whole lot of gab that says nothing. And so hopefully we can dig up those two clips of Monsef and Jawari, and those are two of the typical liberal henchmen that we have in our sites for sure. And Mr. Producer tells me here is Maria Monsef, and just to set it up, folks, this is at a press conference for World Press Freedom Day, where, well, you'll watch the clip, and afterwards we got frog marched out of the building. Check it out.
Menzies with Rebel Media. Just a quick question. The United Nations, told our reporters they were banned from covering their conferences due to a directive from the Canadian government. Do you support that?
I hope you support what we're doing here today, which is ensuring freedom of expression and an independent free press for your colleagues around the world.
But that's precisely the point. We traveled to Morocco, we traveled to Poland, and we were shut out of UN conferences because of an edict from your government. Does that sound like world press freedom to you, Minister?
What we're doing today is supporting an independent and free press in some of the most troubled regions of the world, and I have no doubt that you rejoice in this investment and this initiative.
Well, but how do you square the fact that you won't even let Canadian journalists that might have a dissenting opinion about things like immigration and climate change to attend UN conferences? And here you are advocating for World Press Freedom Day.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Okay. This doesn't look like a lot of freedom, ladies.
Well, she's in her private area now. Thank you very much.
Okay, then. Well, there you go, folks.
Gee, I guess I cornered and intimidated her too. You know, I think I passed by a Coke machine en route to that lockdown area, Sheila. I should have interviewed the Coke machine. I think I would have gotten better tangible answers than that repetitive talking point that meant nothing. And of course, right after that, the organizers came and Efren and I were given the bum's rush out onto Queen's Quay. And again, think of the irony here, Sheila. World Press Freedom Day. Incredible.
Well, just to correct myself from my earlier statements, I said Grassy Narrows, but I am confusing my Aboriginal communities that are getting screwed over by the Trudeau Liberals. Kian was in Meadow Lake, just to be clear. Meadow Lake, yeah. But I've seen those automated McDonald's robot ordering terminals give me a better response to a question that I may have than anything that you got out of Miriam Monsef. I mean, they're like those old Commodore 64 computers. They only can spit out exactly what you put into them. And somebody gave her that talking point, and that is literally the only thing that she can say, which I think is going to prove excellent for us, because when we are jumping out of the bushes to interview these people on the campaign trail that's coming up at community barbecues and while they're door knocking, we know that we are going to catch them flat-footed. We are going to catch them flat-footed. They won't have a clue how to answer any of our questions. I think one of the best examples of this is the stunned silence that you got from a Liberal MP at the Walk for Israel.
Oh, Michael Levitt.
Oh, I watched that so many times because you can see the exact moment where even you're confused at just how idiotic the moment is, where you just like shake your head because you're asking him, do you support moving the embassy to Jerusalem? And he, at the march for, or at the Walk for Israel, that should be a no-brainer. And he just stares blankly with this like half-assed smile on his face, like a clown smile. It was very, very weird and eerie.
Well, Sheila, it's funny you mentioned Mr. Levitt, because that seems to be his go-to expression. Kian the other day on Parliament Hill also asked him a question, and wow, it was like deja vu all over again. He had that blank look. It was about the idea of that if there is a genocide in Canada, should the government be charged? And his answer made no sense when he finally thought of one. But the original question, I think Mr. Producer has this. This was when I confronted, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Levitt, a Toronto MP, at the Walk with Israel function last month.
Stand by, your Prime Minister. Well, the Liberal MP for York Centre, Michael Levitt, is here. You actually can't miss him, folks. He's got a huge billboard right here, and he's got a little tent here. And he is in attendance, and we're going to go over there and ask him how he feels about the fact that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, in 2 commemoration speeches about the Holocaust, failed to mention that the 6 million victims were indeed Jews, and also how he feels about the idea of moving the Canadian embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, much like the U.S. has done. So let's find out what he has to say. What brings you out to the Walk with Israel, Mr. Levitt?
Yep, not interested in doing media at this point, but thank you.
How do you feel about the fact that Justin Trudeau made 2 commemorations about the Holocaust and never mentioned the Jewish victims of it? Do you stand by your Prime Minister?
We're here today celebrating the Canada-Israel relationship, and that's what we're going to do, proudly and strongly.
Would your party support moving the embassy to Jerusalem?
We're here to support the Canada-Israel relationship, and that's exactly what we're here to do.
And would that include moving the embassy?
Being here and supporting the Canada-Israel relationship, like I continue to do, like we've done for the last 4 years.
Okay. Sir, with all due respect, that you're avoiding the question.
No more questions. We do need to speak.
So, why did you avoid? Well, folks, par for the course with a Liberal MP. 2 very specific questions. Why Justin Trudeau forgot somehow to mention the victim group of the Holocaust twice in commemorations, And of course, no answer regarding whether the Liberals would follow in the footsteps of the United States and move their embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Well, Sheila, I see, before we get to the super chat that just came in, I think what we learned from Mr. Levitt is that is the textbook definition of a sellout. Here is a Jewish MP in a heavily Jewish riding at the Walk with Israel who won't answer two specific questions that I think many constituents in his own riding would be very interested to hear the answer, and instead just goes into robotic talking points. Again, as I said earlier, lots of words saying nothing.
I don't even think there were lots of words there. There were just lots of like stunned silence. But our super chat. Okay, we have one for $20 from Jeff Collar, and he says, "Keep up the good work." Well, we are. We will. I promise.
Thank you for your generosity, Jeff. Thank you. And there's one more, I believe, Sheila?
Is there? No, I think that's it. Why don't you keep talking and I will look for it.
Okay, I'll tell you what I'll do, She-Devil, I'll throw to the Johari clip.
Yes.
This is Masjid Johari. I confronted him last Saturday en route to the fabulous Three Coins restaurant for some breakfast, and but Mr. Johari proved infinitely more interesting than a plate of bacon and eggs. Check it out.
Hi there. How are you doing, sir?
David Menzies, how are you doing there?
Okay. Listen, are you taping something?
I am indeed. I want to ask you,
please stop
why did you support the Iranian regime in a
I
recent
did not
tweet?
support the Iranian regime. These are fake news.
It's fake news?
Do you have any?
Well, the
Do you
Iranian...
have any proof? Do you have any proof, sir?
Yes, your own
Do you
tweet,
have
sir.
any, sir? No, my tweet is.
What is your opinion of Iran? What is your opinion of the regime in Iran?
That is something that we could discuss later.
Oh, why not right now? We know it's one of the largest state sponsors of terrorism in the world. Would you agree with that, sir?
There are terrorism going in there.
Yeah. So do you support the regime?
Absolutely
sir?
not.
Oh, then why did you tweet congratulations?
Because I'm not tweeting congratulations and you're faking your news.
No, I'm not faking my
Yes,
news.
you are. You are. You don't have any fact. You haven't had any facts. Your supporters haven't had any facts for 4 years, and you're harassing me, and I don't appreciate it.
I'm not harassing you, sir. I'm in a public place asking you.
You are in a public place, and I told you I do not support the regime. I do not support advocate for them, and you're accusing me of that. And if you put that in formal writing, then we can have a discussion later on.
Okay, then
thank you very much.
Why is the local Richmond Hill Persian community
that I
so
can't do.
upset?
Why don't you go ask them?
Well, because you've tweeted your support.
No, sir. You're faking, and that's not true.
So yet again. Sheila, that is fascinating. First of all, on the issue of fake news, I guess somebody must have faked his tweets congratulating the regime, and thank goodness there's such a thing as screen capturing. Secondly, as I said, the people most upset, Richmond Hill has a very large Persian community, and I can tell you, I have yet to meet a Persian that is in support of the regime in Tehran. Every Persian I have met emigrated away from Iran to Canada because they found living there completely intolerable. Before the revolution in 1979, this was a very European, entrepreneurial country. The spirit has been sucked out of that nation. If you had to pick one country in the world where the buyer's remorse reigns supreme, it's this. If you could reverse the time-space continuum back to 1979, that revolution would never have happened. Listen, the Shah was no Boy Scout, I'll grant you that, but compared to the Ayatollahs, life is horrible. So this is one writing I wouldn't be surprised to see flip come October, Sheila, because there is such outrage by members of his own ethnicity over those comments. And again, speaking of fakery, this is a guy that in the last election campaign, 2015, passed himself off as a practicing engineer. Guess what? He hasn't been a practicing engineer since 1999. Yeah, we got to go back to the last century, and yet he was claiming falsely that he was an engineer. Unbelievable for him to throw out the slander that this was fake news.
You know, if you want a billboard truck, this is how you get a billboard truck. Like, this is how we show up in your riding with a billboard truck. This is how we do it. But is this really any different than Catherine McKenna congratulating Syria for signing on to the Paris Accord? Or I think when I was in Morocco, she did this sort of streeter type interview with one of the representatives from the UAE for their dedication to fighting climate change while they were simultaneously announcing opening more coal plants. I mean, this is just the Liberals' affinity for dictators. Justin Trudeau admires China and so on and so forth. But I found that super chat thanks to some help from our friends in the office. It's from Lou Grimm, giving us a very generous $20.
Wow.
And he says, and David, I think this is one, he uses language very near and dear to your heart. He says, I think that the Dominion of Canada should get out of the United Nations. Our PM, which Prime Minister, PM, he puts in brackets, particularly menstrual, serves the UN and not the Dominion of Canada. Proud member of the John Birch Society, Godspeed.
Yeah, I by the way, we are a mere, 9 days away from Dominion Day. I will go to my grave calling July 1st Dominion Day. This was an act of historical vandalism. By the way, thanks for the super chat, but I've got to get on my Dominion Day high horse here. Sheila, as you know, we have to go back to, I believe it was 1982, 83. It was on the last day of Parliament in July in which this motion went through. There were 7 members short of a quorum in the House of Commons that day, 13 as opposed to 20. And by the way, I got in touch with the House of Commons, the procedural people, to find out, well, if you don't have a quorum, how is that legal? And this is a really interesting cautionary tale. You don't need a quorum if everyone in the room is unanimous in the bill going through. And I never knew that, Sheila. I don't know if you knew that either. But that kind of sent shivers up my spine about any kind of act of legislation that can go through on a sleepy Friday in July, just hours before adjournment, that, hey, we don't even need the minimum 20 MPs. But this was a historic, over century-old name of our national holiday. And again, this was vandalism by the Pierre Trudeau Liberals of the day. And, I think I wouldn't be so angry if it wasn't just the somewhat bland Canada Day, which, as I've always said, is one consonant away from being the name of a popular brand of ginger ale. But could you imagine our neighbors to the south, Independence Day? Could you imagine them calling that USA Day? And that would kind of sound like a national newspaper down there. But no, again, you take your eye off the ball with these liberal cats, and they will do everything they can to rewrite history and disregard history. So please, folks, join my crusade on July 1st. Wish people a Dominion Day. And if they don't know what you're talking about, educate them.
Yeah, and you know who's joined your crusade against Canada Day?
Who?
Conservative MP Brad Trost. I sent you an email to this effect, but I don't feel like you read all of my emails. And you really should, because some of them are pretty funny. But yeah, he had a member statement in the House of Commons where he said that he is henceforth saying the words Happy Dominion Day, and he gave the historical context for Dominion Day and referenced the Bible. But Brad Trost is really sort of unchained because he did lose his nomination. He's not running again. So he's saying all the things that he wants to say and doing all the things that he wants to do, and including expressing pro-Dominion Day sentiment and pro-life sentiment to the contrary of, the control of Andrew Scheer. So, you've got a high-profile MP on the Dominion Day bandwagon, and we have some super chats. So I'm going to get over to those. We have one from MVP, $6 Canadian, very generous, thank you, saying, as an outsider looking in, the Liberals don't seem like a very bright bunch. Their leader is a foppish moron. So everybody who follows a foppish moron can't be that intelligent. At least that's my 2 cents.
Well, Justin Trudeau, as we've oft stated, Sheila, this is a trust fund baby. He's had an entitled lifestyle. He hasn't had the silver spoon in his mouth. He's had the entire silver cutlery set, I would suggest. He's never been in the real world, at least in a serious full-time position. And I have to admit, I bought into the Tory campaign ads of 2015. Remember, he's just not ready. And I looked at Justin Trudeau as somewhat buffoonish, kind of silly, in over his head, clownish, immature. But what we found in the last 4 years is there is a real mean streak there, Sheila. There is, elements. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't diagnose somebody, certainly not remotely. But it's almost as though he's a sociopath. He is a little dictator. I think his actions show that, and indeed his words, because remember, he expressed his admiration for dictatorships like China because of how they can get things done, right? So this is what has shocked me, and I think it speaks volumes that, especially now, in the last several months, we've seen all the scandals, SNC-Lavalin, Admiral Norman, that this should be a slam dunk for the Conservatives to win. But it's not. I don't think it is, Sheila. I think we have seen, unfortunately, from Mr. extraordinarily levels of weakness and spinelessness. And this is what's going to make the next election a horse race. My personal prediction right now, and I know 4 months is an eternity in politics, but I think it's going to be a minority mandate, and it might be either Conservative or Liberal. What's your thinking on this?
Well, going back to your diagnosis of Justin Trudeau as a sociopath, I think you're attributing sociopathy when I think it's more idiocy. I actually, it feels like there's malice, but I think he's just really, really stupid. I think he doesn't know how to handle real life situations. He's not a good negotiator with people because he's entitled. So when you're negotiating from a position where you feel like you're entitled to everything, things just don't go your way. You boss around people because people have always responded to you in a certain way because you were, like you say, a silver place setting kind of guy. And so I think that just reflects in his leadership style. With regard to the election outcome, these Conservatives learn something from Donald Trump. And I'm not saying govern like Donald Trump. I'm saying respond to the media like Donald Trump and realize that there's a whole chunk of this country that is disaffected. They are not partisan conservatives, but they are holding conservative values of, personal responsibility, getting government out of your life, just generally wanting to be left alone and, keep what you earn and earn what you keep kind of thing. And he's not speaking to those people because those people are sick of the political correctness. They're sick of the people at the CBC telling us what we can and can't say, what news we can and can't consume. Andrew Scheer needs to start communicating with those people. The day Donald Trump started communicating with those people and paying attention to those issues is really the day that Hillary Clinton got left in the dust. Hillary Clinton didn't speak to those people either. She didn't go to their states to campaign. That's where Donald Trump focused his campaign. It's time for Andrew Scheer to cowboy up and start taking these issues seriously and ignoring the haters that want him to lose, because they will always want him to lose.
But that's the thing.
I don't know if he has the guts. I don't know if he has it.
No, and what's even more troublesome, and I'll speak in the context of current events, things that just happened this month, Sheila. Two of the base issues, I think, of conservatives are free speech and also the Islamification. And on those two files, what did we see the Conservative members of that Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights about Section 13? Well, they waved the white flag of surrender. And yet, this is a Conservative government that still has dozens of Conservatives that were in the Stephen Harper regime when Section 13 was expunged from the Canadian Human Rights Act. Now they're not even, it seems to me, putting up that much of a fight about it. Secondly, you had Salim Mansour, you had his candidacy in a London riding dismissed by the Conservatives. He's a fantastic candidate. He is what, as Tariq Fatah, to use one of his quotes, he's my kind of Muslim. He's a guy that has spent decades writing and warning about Islamofascism. And these Andrew Scheer Conservatives are afraid that these writings from a Muslim, by a Muslim, about Muslims, they're afraid that this is going to be spun as Islamophobic by the media party and their usual enemies. Can you believe it? So for the Conservatives, Salim Mansour is not their kind of Muslim. They'd rather get into bed with somebody that, drifts a little more to the radical edges as long as they can bring in votes. This is despicable, and I don't understand why it's happening, other than, for what you alluded to earlier, that Andrew Scheer is terrified of being criticized by the opposition and criticized by the media party. And like you said, those two constituencies, no matter what Mr. Scheer does, will always hate him. So it's a zero-sum game for him, Sheila.
Yeah, I mean, Salim Mansour is the epitome of a properly functioning immigration system.
Yeah.
He came here, he integrated into our country, he worked his way up from being, I think, a cab driver to a successful professor and a thinker, contributing to Canadian society. He's exactly the kind of immigrant that we want, and he's a testament to a properly functioning immigration system. He's the perfect candidate, but even he is too controversial for Andrew Scheer's Conservatives. And don't get me wrong, my criticism of Andrew Scheer is not because I don't like Andrew Scheer. I need Andrew Scheer to be the best Conservative that he can be, the most Conservative that he can be, so that he can fix all the damage that Justin Trudeau has done, and so that he can appeal to those Conservatives who are sort of disaffected, and he's not doing that. And that's why I spare no criticism of him. I want him to come around to my way of thinking, like he did on the Paris Accord. But we have a bunch of super chats that I have missed. Okay, we've got Bill Orr, doesn't give us a comment, but he offers us $20 Canadian. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you, sir.
That's very generous. I'm sure that a super chat has disappeared along the way. So guys in the control room, if you could send that to me, I'd really appreciate that. Oh, you did. Thank you, Justin. Okay, we've got one from my friend Craig McDonald. He's got the cutest little kids. He gives us $20.99 Canadian. Great job, you guys. Switching gears a bit. Sheila, do you think Jason Kenney would support or allow a referendum on Alberta secession should Ottawa continue to alienate the West? I don't. I don't think I don't think Jason Kenney would do that. He has said that he would seriously consider some form of public consultation, be that in the form of a referendum or whatever, on equalization, about getting Alberta a better deal within Confederation. But he is absolutely a federalist, and I don't think he's going to give Albertans an opportunity to express to express our views to the rest of the country on how we feel about how we've been treated for so long, just as, the change purse of Confederation. So I don't think he will. I think, though, that there's enough of a parade started for secession that if somebody jumped in front of it, some politician jumped in front of it, they could probably see a few people elected to the legislature under the banner of secessionism next time around. But they're not going to get it from Jason Kenney.
But you know, on Sheila, on that point, I agree. I don't think that question will ever be floated. But in a hypothetical situation, I wonder what the vote would be. I mean, I've lived in Alberta for 2 years, but you're living there now. You certainly know Alberta better than I do. I'm just of the opinion that if it didn't fly in Quebec twice when they floated this, I can't see a majority of Albertans voting. And of course, we also have to find out how the question is written, and you know how clear cut it was, unlike the last question used in the last Quebec referendum. But what do you think this is a completely hypothetical question. What do you think the vote split would be, Sheila?
Oh God, I don't know. But I have seen polls that, you know, I think it's close to 50% of Albertans express some form of separatist tendencies. Now, I don't know what some form means. Is that like, give us a better deal within equalization, give us, you know, the same treatment as American states have, to be able to determine our own laws and decide how we run our own economy. I don't know what some form of separatism means, but I know that separatism is on the rise. And when you talk to the old timers, my mom included, she's probably angry that I called her an old timer, but yeah, they say it's a lot worse than when the last Trudeau was in power, because the last Trudeau, you know, he was out to get us, but he wasn't entirely stupid. This
Yes.
one is also out to get us and stupid. So it's that much worse. And, you know, what other options do we, like, there's a lot of options that we can sort of flex our muscles within Confederation. We could try to get a deal like Quebec has. Those are steps I think people would be more likely to make than remove ourselves from Confederation. But culturally speaking, Albertans are far closer to our American friends to the south of us, as far as, you know, our freedom culture, gun culture, agriculture, all that sorts of stuff. We're far closer culturally to our friends to the south of us than we are to the majority of the country to the east and to the far west. And that's just something that's always going to be. Now, are we going to figure out how to do that within the country or without? I don't know.
You know, I'm glad you as an Albertan said that, Sheila, because when I lived the 2 years in Alberta, one thing I came away with is that Alberta is easily the most American of all the provinces, you know, in terms of attitudes and what have you. So it's good to hear it from someone like yourself who's lived most of her life here. That was my impression as well. Yeah. So which must make them really hate the regime we have in Ottawa. I mean, I don't want to keep harping on Section 13, but when you think of Section 13 and what it stands for, and the fact that you can basically get a five-figure settlement for having hurt feelings, this is the opposite of the First Amendment. This is anti-free speech. This is pro-censorship. And I don't think there's much of an appetite for that in Alberta.
No, not at all. I mean, it's so funny because the NDP tried to run a campaign on exposing some UCP candidates' ties to the Trump campaign, and it actually made his vote share go up.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. They're so out of touch. Okay, we have a couple more super chats that Mr. Producer Man sent to me. We've got one from W. James Wright. If you sent a comment, I'm sorry they didn't send it to me, gives us $5 Canadian. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I read Bill Orrs. We've got one from Dave Anderson for $10 Canadian. Again, no comment. Thank you very much. And I see one at the top here from Peter Norris, another $10. Again, no comment. So people must like what we're talking about, David, because they're not telling us to change topics.
Well, you know what? I'm actually just so jealous right now. But, you know, all, money coming in with no comments. If only Lady Menzoid was like that. Just brought in the paycheck and didn't harp on me for whatever slight I committed. So that's the way, I like it, as Casey in the Sunshine Band used to say. By the way, you referred to Justin as Mr. Producer Man. How dare you use anything in the misgender field. I think it's Mr. Producer Person or Miss Mr. Producer Person. But I segue into a story that you came across yesterday, Sheila, a good news story.
Wait, stop your segue. We have a comment that I missed. So just stop your segue because I feel like it's going to be a good one. Okay, Dave Anderson, sorry, I do have your comment to us. Sorry, I should have been paying closer attention to my computer. You say, any thoughts on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's body language meeting Trump yesterday? Pretty weak. Hope you'll be jumping out of the bushes after all the candidates this coming election. Oh, we're going to be like lions picking off the weak little gazelles all summer long, I promise you. But thoughts on Justin Trudeau's body language? Very demure. Not exactly masculine. Yeah, you can see who's the alpha and who's the beta. Seems a little too high. Gamma? Who's the gamma male? Yeah, it was difficult to watch as a woman who likes her man manly. That was unpleasant to watch. It was hard on the eyes. He sits like a Picasso painting, to be honest with you. Anyway.
Wow. And speaking of the various genders, Sheila, I was alluding to the fact that you came across a good news story. Finally, someone is speaking out against what I call transanity. Specifically, look, I mean, when it comes to, men pretending to be women and women pretending to be men, listen, I believe in freedom, do your own thing, as long as you're not getting tax dollars for your slice and dice surgery and hormone treatment, do whatever knocks you out. But there was a prevailing problem, and it's getting worse and worse, and it's something I predicted years ago when I wrote an item for Ezra Levent's old magazine, Western Standard, pertaining to a male mountain biker competing against the females. Naturally, he won. And it was a very interesting story, Sheila, because the silver medal winner, they're on the podium, gold is highest, silver, then bronze. The boyfriend of the silver medal winner went up with a white t-shirt, and he had taken a Sharpie and he had written 100% female. I kid you not, when she donned that shirt on the podium, the mountain bike governing authority in Canada suspended her for something like 2 or 3 months, for wearing a t-shirt that stated the truth. But that's what's happening. We have males pretending to be females. These are people that, when you are a natural born male, there's no taking away. You have bigger bone mass, you have more muscle, higher muscle density, you have more testosterone. Of course, you have an unfair advantage. It's the reason why in the world of sports, only equestrian and auto racing is where you see the sexes competing on a level playing field. But Sheila, you came across a story that finally some women are speaking up about this nonsense.
Yeah, female track athletes in Connecticut have filed a federal discrimination lawsuit against a state policy that allows biological males to compete against females. And the story goes that the girls claim that the inclusion of athletes who claim to be female but are in fact biological males may have cost them top finishes in competitions and possible scholarships. This one hits home for me because I have a daughter who is highly competitive in rugby, but she's 13.
Yep.
And 13-year-old girls and 13-year-old boys. 13-year-old boys look like men. And my 13-year-old daughter is smaller than me, and I'm not a big woman. The day that a male laces up his cleats and decides that he's a girl and competes against my daughter is the day that her dreams of getting a rugby scholarship are over, because it's not worth the lifelong head injury that she could experience. And that's just a personal story from me. These girls, I mean, let's be real here. A male track athlete at the high school level can likely beat a female Olympic athlete. Yep. That's just how it is. And so, I mean, all it takes is for switching sides really fast to ensure a mediocre male athlete the opportunity to steal a scholarship from a female athlete who's competed and trained her whole life. It's just not fair. And this will spell the end of female sports. And tell me somebody, where are the feminists who keep yammering on about we need female spaces? Well, where are you girls? Because you're pretty silent on all of this, and the few that do speak up, the second they get a little blowback, they shut right up.
100%. I'd go even further. I think this is an act of misogyny, actually, Sheila. This is, an act of hatred against elite female athletes because you're costing them their positions unfairly. And like you said, let's have a spine about this, ladies. When Martina Navratilova spoke up about this a couple of months ago, like you said, there was some blowback and she had to do a mea culpa apology. We have nothing to apologize for. This is anti-woman. And Martina Navratilova, she's a lesbian herself. I don't, it's right now we're into Pride Week. I don't know why the initialism is LGBT. I don't get the idea why the gay community has aligned themselves with the trans community. And I know people in the gay community that have the exact same thoughts about that. So good to see somebody, at least in Connecticut, speaking out against this. We're almost at a racetrack, Sheila. I think you have another super chat, right?
One super chat, we're going to sneak it in under the wire. From Fraser McBurney, $5, very generous. Thank you for that last minute donation. It says a little off topic, but has anyone seen Ruth Bader Ginsburg or has a photo of her? Or maybe she's with Elvis.
How much? What did that movie make at the box office, Sheila? Did even 10 people buy tickets?
You know what? The fact that I don't even know what movie about Ruth Bader Ginsburg you're talking about means that I, wasn't even remotely busting through pop culture. They're on watch for her, like people are on watch for Sophie Gregoire Trudeau. See lots of pictures of Justin Trudeau with his kids, but not a lot with him and Sophie. So, I don't know. Maybe she's with Sophie.
And where's her wedding ring when you do see her on these few occasions in public? That's what I want to know. Anyways, Mr. Producer Man Person has said we got to go. Listen, folks, on the behalf of Sheila Gunn Reid and myself, David Menzies, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you all for your generous donations. And hey, Ezra will be back next week. Thank you so much.